I'm Elad Gila, one of the co-founders of Reach. Cold Email Hot Takes is a mini video series in which we talk to inspiring sales leaders about their approach to outbound sales. In this week's episode, we're excited to be joined by Phillis from Demo Desk. Can you quickly introduce yourself, Phillis?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Elad. So I'm currently working as a marketing coordinator at Demo Desk, but I worked previously as a SDR, as a sales development representative for a little over a year. So I've got a fair amount of experience with writing emails and doing outreach. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here and talk about it.
Yeah, we're excited. I think you're gonna have this unique perspective, especially how kind of sales ends up tying into marketing and how these teams end up speaking to each other and working together. And maybe we can touch a little bit on that. But and perhaps this applies to marketing as well. But one of the things that we think about is how to stand out from the crowd, right? People are overwhelmed with the amount of emails they're getting. Everyone's kind of using similar formulas. I'm curious if you found in your experience now or in the past of ways that were effective in terms of getting people's attention and engaging them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my goal whenever I wrote emails was always to make it relevant and make it interesting, if at all possible, try to throw some humor in there. And I found what really stood out to people, because you're right, sales leaders especially, they receive tons and tons of emails. And so how do you stand out from the crowd? I found one of the best ways was to do something slightly unexpected. And so just one example that comes to mind is I was once doing a bit of research on a sales leader. So I went to his LinkedIn page and I was looking through his profile about section, and he seemed like he had everything just like together. He was saying, Q1 led his team to reach 150% quota. Q2 led them to 175%. And so I was just reading through, I'm like, dang, this guy, what can I do for him? What can I offer him? And so at first I was going to write him off, and I'm like, okay, move on to the next guy, maybe who doesn't have it all together. But then I thought, wait, maybe I can use this as an intro. And so my intro email to him was basically like, hey, Mr. So-and-so, saw from your profile that you helped lead your team to 175% quota achievement last quarter. And honestly, this made me think, what am I going to offer the guy who has everything? But then I was wondering, and then so I went into a pitch about Demo Desk, about how we might be able to help him structure his team as they're looking to grow. And this got me a response. And so he responded, was saying, hey, now's not the right time, but I loved your outreach and it made me read through it. I never respond to these, but you got my attention, so good job. So something like that, just doing something unexpected to stand out.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think in some ways some ways people do that, we refer to it as kind of like pattern interrupts, like do anything that's kind of just like a bit unexpected, surprises, you kind of mentioned it, and going away from these formulas, because I think we're always like, or people receive emails a lot, right? You're kind of really good at like pattern recognition, and so we see how things are kind of, and then we can easily like write things off. All right, I don't want to spend time on this, but like if you approach it like, whoa, that's different, caught my eye, gets me to the next line, the next line, the next line. I think that's a great approach. Is that did you like, would you intentionally do that, or did it just like when it kind of happened you would do it, or like did you have an approach of like, cool, I'm going to try to find an angle every time I reach out that's going to be really unexpected?
I think I just try to work with what is available to me. So I try to think out of the box, but it really depended on what I could find about the person.
Right.
And so if I could make something unexpected, write something unexpected from what I found, that was great. But yeah, it depended on what I could find about them.
Definitely. Well, it sounds like then you were definitely engaging in a more personalized outreach, right? So you were researching them, you were coming up with something engaging or meaningful or relevant to say about their profile. Sounds like LinkedIn was definitely one of the places you were looking. Are there other types of personalization you use? Would you talk about their company? Would you talk about I don't know, news, or was it primarily LinkedIn based?
I definitely use LinkedIn a lot. I would also sometimes go on Google and just try to search their name, see if anything popped up. Maybe they were in a webinar, maybe there was an article that they were in, and I would usually try to reference something they said, especially if it was related to what Demo Desk could support with.
Right.
And so, yeah, I tried to use different avenues. And one thing I found was quite good in scaling personalization a little bit was I found this one article that the CRO had been a guest in, and he had mentioned some things, and I was like, oh, that actually is relevant. And so I took that, I made that an opener, but this company had actually a lot of sales leaders that I wanted to reach out to. And I was like, okay, this is going to take a long time, but if I try to do this for every single one of these people, what if I just use what I wrote about the CRO and repeat that actually for all these sales leaders, because it's relevant to them since he's their CRO. And so I spoke directly to the CRO. It's like, hey, I noticed that you were in this article, you said this. And to all the other sales leaders, I said, hey, I noticed that your CRO said this. And so that was a way that I used to scale personalization when there were a lot of people I wanted to reach out to in the same account.
That's super smart. I think, this is personalization, as we all know, like obviously it's very time consuming, right?
Yeah.
And like it's between the research and then having to like identify what the right thing and then come up with like creative copy around that. Obviously it's pretty tiring and time consuming. But the way to make it work is exactly what you're saying, right? It's like having a process, and like that process is like, cool, I find some information about, some of the C-suite executives, or, I find some information about the company or, something, or the team in general. And then like, I can repackage that. And like, so you've just scaled your research, significantly by doing that. That's really smart.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, like, did you guys have very long cadences, like when you're reaching out, and did you find that, like they were multi-channel when you were doing it, or was it all email based?
Definitely tried to multi-thread it. We tried to do even like a 3-point touch point on the first day, essentially. And so I started out with LinkedIn. I would connect. I A/B tested trying to send a message to connect and just connecting. And honestly, it was about the same. And so I would connect as my first touch point. And then in the connection, if I had a message, I would basically say like, hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm going to be sending you an email. Wanted to give you wanted to put a face to the name, essentially, just like a really quick message. And then I'd shoot them the email. And I found that to be actually really helpful, because if they saw that like, oh, Phyllis is going to be reaching out to me, they're going to be sending an email, even if they aren't interested in the email, it stood out to them more when they looked in their inbox and they saw that I'd sent something, and they were more likely to open it. And so I did those two: connect on LinkedIn, send an email, and then give them a call. And then they would go through sort of more of a cadence where, maybe nothing for 2 days and then an email, and then nothing for another day and then a call. And so I think the key to sequences and cadences and touch points is to be persistent without being annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you can find that balance, then you're golden, because people can appreciate persistence. And I think the key to that, to being persistent and not annoying, is to provide value and not be pushy in your outreach.
What would be some of the ways that you would try to add value?
Yeah, that was something I was constantly working on. I first tried to send articles that I thought were interesting. I also would see if there were any webinars that might be relevant, any resources we had that could be helpful. And some people responded well to that, which was great. I also just tried to let them realize that, okay, I've done my research. I've looked into your company a little bit. I'm not just mass emailing. And generally, if people felt that I was really making an effort in my outreach, they were a lot more open to responding. So I guess a value add could even be you showing that you care, that you're putting in the effort to do your research and build up some kind of relationship.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I think, I think sometimes we have this concept in sales that like we're meant to be sharing this material with them that's going to be someone's going to like change their, really help them out. Like, you've never talked to this person, you don't really know their problems yet, but like, yeah, you're going to send some article that's going to be like, wow, thank you so much for that. Like, that doesn't usually happen, right?
Yeah.
But I think the impact or the benefit of it is really in terms of showing or creating credibility for yourself as a seller, right? Like, you're saying, hey, this is a space I know. This is a space I think about a lot. I think about companies like yours a lot. I think about roles like yours a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And the problems that people like you have in these roles is something that, I'm thinking about. Like, so you're kind of showing through various signals of like, hey, I'm somebody that's like worth having a chat with in terms of like exploring a problem. And so I've come to like view it in that way, rather than just be like, yes, I'm going to send you that blog post and you're going to be like thanking me. And,
I think you really hit the nail on the head. That definitely reflects my experience as an SDR. A lot of times people decided to take a meeting with me more because they said, hey, you did a great job in your outreach. Sure, let's talk. Rather than, oh yeah, I think your product can really help me.
right.
So I feel like, especially as SDRs, or at least my experience as an SDR, I felt like I was selling myself more as somebody that people would want to talk to, who could potentially help solve their problems and understand their problems, rather than selling my product. Like, I would try to maybe dovetail Demo Desk in there a little bit, but a lot of the time it was more selling myself as somebody worthwhile to talk to.
Definitely. No, and if I think, the common like best practices now, everyone's like, yeah, like obviously don't talk too much about yourself, don't talk too much about your own company, like, or the product, that, you're not here to like pitch features. You're here to like pique interest, and kind of get them to the next, stage of engagement, or whatever that may be. And like, I've always taken this approach, that like, even when you write, like the first, like each line is to get them to read to the next line, right? And like, that's like kind of, and then like each touch point is to kind of get them to the next one. And so like, that first email might be to get them to engage in a reply. And then after that, it might be to engage them in a call. And like, you're obviously not trying to solve everything in like one swoop. That like just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
I am curious though, because since you moved to marketing, which, as we were joking before, I think is like, is really just scaled up sales in a way, but maybe in some ways a little bit, less direct in terms of one-to-one. Are you seeing that there's overlap in terms of like best practices in terms of your sales outreach that you would apply to your marketing outreach?
I think there definitely is overlap. Like I had mentioned to you when we were talking before, my goal is kind of to become a marketing master, essentially. I don't sounds kind of but yeah, I think that sales and marketing alignment are incredibly important, because salespeople are talking to the customers. They know what their customers are thinking, what's important to them, and with marketing, marketing people usually have a lot of education in how to run campaigns and do things and design beautiful things, and it's all wonderful, but they don't have the experience of talking directly to the customers. And so bringing these two together is incredibly important. And I think that's sort of the value that I can bring, having sales experience in marketing. And just one example is one of the projects I've been working on recently is creating playbook templates that can be pre-uploaded into our platform, Demo Desk, or just used as playbooks for sales meetings. And we had some templates that were created about a little over a year ago, and they were pretty good. But as I was going through them, I was just like, actually, I wouldn't use that slide. And it's like, oh, actually, I wouldn't say that. And so I was just going through it, and I was like, well, this could actually be adjusted to what we actually do in reality. And so I think that's also where my sales experience and where sales and marketing really needs to come together is sales is on the front lines doing the work, and marketing is a lot of the times supporting sales. That's what we really do on the marketing team. But we can support sales best if we actually have an awareness of how sales does what they do.
Completely. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of initiative to kind of connect or make the teams talk more and have more of like a feedback loop between sales and marketing. Is that fair?
That is the goal, trying to align sales and marketing as much as possible and make sure that the resources we put out, that the articles we put out will really resonate with salespeople.
That's great. I think it's such an underrated thing to do in orgs is just like listen to the sales and CS people. Like they're the ones talking to your people all day long. It's like you should like be like debriefing them all the time. I've seen it in like past companies I worked at where there just isn't that. Nobody's like trying to take advantage of that knowledge, at least on an organizational level. Like within a team, it's different, of course, but across the company. But so it's refreshing to hear that Demodesk is open to that, and like you're helping kind of lead the way with it. So very cool. Well, thanks so much, Phillis, for joining us. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you. Some really great insights and ideas on kind of how to do cold outreach in a way that will be surprising and engaging and hopefully get us more replies in a very difficult time. So thanks again.
It was honestly a pleasure. Thank you so much, Elad.